For detainees vanished from an ICE facility after a violent uprising, no alarms, no warnings, and no clear answers. How did it happen, and why is no one talking? Tucked into Newark's ironbound neighborhood is Delaney Hall, a name that's quickly become synonymous with chaos. But this place didn't always house migrant detainees. In fact, just a few months ago, it was quietly converted into an ICE detention center, almost overnight. The switch came after a massive $900 million deal between the federal government and GEO Group, a private prison company with a long history of controversy. The contract, signed under the Trump administration, aimed to ramp up immigration detention capacity across the country. But critics say Delaney Hall was never meant to hold this many people, and certainly not under these conditions. Since its reopening, Delaney Hall has been the center of public outrage. Protesters have lined the streets, demanding transparency. Whistleblowers have warned of inhumane treatment inside. And last month, reports surfaced that several House Democrats had allegedly forced their way into the building just to see what was happening behind closed doors. From the outside, Delaney Hall looked like just another facility under ICE's growing reach. But inside, tensions were simmering and something was about to snap. For weeks, detainees inside Delaney Hall had been complaining. The food was reportedly cold, late, and often barely edible. Some said they waited hours between meals. Others claimed they were served the same thing day after day, unidentifiable, barely warmed slop. But it wasn't just the meals. Detainees spoke of overcrowded rooms, broken plumbing, and freezing temperatures at night. One source described it as a pressure cooker with no valve. And then came the final straw. According to reports, the chaos erupted inside a third-floor dormitory. Dozens of detainees, around 50 by some estimates, finally had enough. In a coordinated burst of rage, they knocked down part of a dorm wall. The noise echoed through the facility like a warning shot. Guards were caught off guard. Some detainees reportedly fashioned a rope out of bedsheets, using it to rappel down from the third floor. Others surged through broken doors, scattering in different directions. Within minutes, parts of Delaney Hall were no longer under ICE control. From inside, it felt like a prison break. From outside, no one knew what was coming next. When the dust settled, it became clear at least 4 detainees were unaccounted for. Some sources feared the number could be higher. And the way they vanished? It was almost cinematic. Using the makeshift rope of bedsheets, several detainees descended from the upper floor under the cover of darkness. Others reportedly slipped out through compromised exits as chaos distracted the guards. There are even unconfirmed reports that some may have changed into civilian clothing to blend in, something that's raising serious questions about the facility's preparedness. The manhunt began immediately. ICE agents fanned out into the surrounding neighborhoods. Local police departments were called in. Drones scanned the nearby train yards and industrial zones. But so far, there's been no official word on who was captured, if any were at all. The most alarming part? Some officials believe the escape was pre-planned. That this wasn't just a spontaneous riot but a breakout in disguise. And the public? They were about to learn just how fragile the system really was. While authorities scrambled to regain control inside Delaney Hall, another storm was building outside. Just hours before the riot, roughly 36 demonstrators had gathered near the gates, activists, families of detainees, and political organizers demanding accountability. They'd been there before, holding signs and chanting through megaphones. But this time, the tension was different. Heavier. As if something was about to boil over. When news of the revolt spread, the crowd swelled. Emotions ran high. Protesters clashed with ICE agents trying to secure the perimeter. At one point, DHS officers were seen physically blocking protesters from stopping vans as they left the facility. Photos captured the standoff, hands pressed against windshields, ICE agents shouting orders, demonstrators refusing to back down. To many, it felt like a war zone. And as footage circulated online, the story exploded, drawing national attention within hours. But the real shock? This was only the beginning. Because what came next would raise even more questions about who's really in control and who's being silenced. In the days following the riot, officials scrambled to control the narrative. ICE released a brief, carefully worded statement confirming there had been a disturbance at Delaney Hall but made no mention of the missing detainees. GEO Group stayed silent. No press conferences. No detailed explanations. Just a wall of PR silence. But behind the scenes, sources painted a different picture. Whistleblowers claim the facility went into full lockdown, with detainees denied phone calls and visitation. Lawyers representing several migrants reported being stonewalled told their clients were unavailable or in restricted status. One attorney even described the facility as a black hole, where people and information simply vanished. And then there were the rumors guards reassigned overnight, surveillance footage mysteriously missing, and unmarked vans arriving in the middle of the night. All of it raising the same question: what exactly are they trying to hide? It wasn't just a riot. It was a breakdown of security, transparency, and trust. And as investigators were blocked at every turn, one thing became clear. Whatever happened inside Delaney Hall, someone didn't want the world to know. As the investigation stalled, a darker theory began to circulate, one that no official would confirm, but that insiders couldn't ignore. Was the riot a spontaneous act of desperation, or was it orchestrated? Some believe the uprising was too coordinated to be random. Bedsheets tied with military precision. Timed distractions. Gaps in surveillance. And the fact that certain detainees, many of them reportedly facing deportation to unstable regions, vanished without a trace. That didn't sit right with everyone. Even more chilling, a former guard who once worked at Delaney Hall anonymously claimed that something like this was inevitable. According to them, staffing was dangerously low, morale was worse, and protocols were being ignored to meet quotas. We were told to look the other way more than once, they said. Then came the online leaks. A handful of documents surfaced, allegedly showing internal warnings about growing tensions at Delaney weeks before the riot. If true, that means officials saw it coming and did nothing. So, was it a failure of leadership? A quiet rebellion? Or something more deliberate? Whatever the answer, the silence from those in charge is starting to sound like an admission. And what no one's talking about is what's. Weeks have passed, and yet, the names and identities of the missing detainees remain unreleased. No mugshots. No details. No official updates. Just silence. Sources close to the investigation claim at least 4 individuals are still unaccounted for, but some suggest the real number could be higher. With Delaney Hall operating under private management, public oversight is murky at best. And now, immigrant advocacy groups are demanding answers not just about the riot but about the entire system. How do 4 people escape a maximum security facility without anyone noticing? One activist asked during a heated press conference. This wasn't just a slip-up. It was a system failure. But it's not just Delaney Hall under scrutiny anymore. Across the country, similar facilities have come under fire for overcrowding, inhumane conditions, and lack of accountability. Lawmakers, some of whom allegedly tried to force their way into Delaney weeks prior, are now calling for investigations into ICE contracts, GEO Group's billion-dollar deal, and even DHS oversight. The escape at Delaney might have lit the fuse. But the explosion? That's only getting started. Delaney Hall was supposed to be secure. It was supposed to represent order, control, and containment. But instead, it's become a symbol of everything that's unraveling behind closed doors. A riot that no one saw coming, or did they? A facility overrun, detainees vanished, and silence from the people who should have answers. And yet, as the protests grow louder, as whistleblowers come forward, and as pressure mounts for transparency, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about food. Or bedsheets. Or a broken wall. It was about desperation pushed to the edge. A flashpoint born from a system that values contracts over humanity, silence over accountability, and secrecy over truth. The real question isn't how the escape happened. It's how many more are coming. Because if 4 people can disappear from a facility like Delaney Hall, what else has already slipped through the cracks? And who's still watching?